Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today we saw for the first time the dramatic video of the moment that Bowe Bergdahl, who had been the last American prisoner of war in Afghanistan, was returned to American custody. Video provided to NBC News by the Taliban shows Taliban fighters surrounding Bergdahl, who sits in a pickup truck wearing traditional Afghan robes. And then minutes later, an American helicopter descending to pick up the prisoner of war. This is the moment the exchange takes place. After a quick handshake with Bergdahl's Taliban captors, the Americans return quickly to their helicopter, one walking backwards so they can keep an eye on the Taliban fighters. Earlier in the video, one of those Taliban fighters can be heard telling Bergdahl not to come back to Afghanistan because he, quote, won't make it out alive next time. Before Bowe Bergdahl is taken aboard the American helicopter, a man can be seen patting him down. The copter takes off a short time later, roughly 1 minute after touchdown. Meanwhile, in Bergdahl's hometown of Haley, Idaho, citizens have been hoping and praying for the Army sergeant's return. Town officials today canceled a rally celebrating Bergdahl's release as critics attack the 28-year-old Army sergeant as a deserter and a traitor. Town officials have been deluged with angry calls concerning Bergdahl, who is recovering at a military hospital in Germany after 5 years in Taliban captivity. A man who is yet to tell his side of the story, we should know. Bowe Bergdahl may have walked away from his post with the intent to desert, as his critics charge. We do not know all the facts yet. In fact, there's a whole complicated set of issues around his capture and the decision to exchange him for 5 Taliban fighters who have been held at Guantanamo Bay, seen here in amateur video that purportedly shows their homecoming, or at least release back to Qatar. But the reality and complexity of all this is increasingly divorced from the insanity of the backlash to the decision to bring Bowe Bergdahl home. On Twitter today, an amazing spectacle, as blogger Matt Binder documented multiple examples of just regular rank-and-file conservatives completely changing their tune on Bergdahl after the full Drudge Report Fox News freakout. Twitter user LemonTree46, before the release. Why has Army Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl been left behind and practically forgotten by the Obama administration? Then, LemonTree46 after the release. This hope pro-Bergdahl by Obama is just another example of the Obama terrorist appeasement policy, impeach. This from George McAdoo. Before, thank you for the opportunity to sign the petition to bring home Bowe Bergdahl, Semper Fi. Same guy. After, shock claim, Army wanted to shoot Bergdahl, and in my opinion, he should be. Stand him against the wall with Obama. Twitter user Patriot, before, bring Sergeant Bergdahl home. I will shout from the mountaintops until he comes home. Retweet to all and all vets, let's roll, people. Same Patriot, after. Bergdahl is a traitor. He should be executed. Obama should be impeached for derelict of duty, negotiates with enemy. It goes on. Will this administration do anything to bring POW Bowe Bergdahl home? Bring back Bergdahl. Same person, 3 weeks later. Where's the petition to hang the traitor? Twitter user Hawkeye posted a picture last week. Please pray for return of Bowe Bergdahl, bring Bowe home. Then 3 days later, hashtag Bergdahl, the traitor. I agree. Obama being so reckless with American interests. Honestly, there were so many, I could have done that all day long, which is what Matt Binder did, actually. Thank you, Matt Binder. The point here isn't the hypocrisy of a bunch of folks on Twitter. You can find that any day. It's that the right-wing freakout here is being driven by the messages being sent by right-wing media telling people that this whole thing was treacherous, even though it revolves around, amazingly, the return of American POW. As I was watching this develop the other day, I joked on Twitter that for maximum absurdity, we should get Oliver North to weigh in on the situation. Why Oliver North? Because Oliver North was at the center of the biggest negotiating with a nasty regime scandal involving hostages in the history of the American Republic. He was initially convicted on 3 felony counts, which were later vacated, for his involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, in which members of the Reagan administration secretly negotiated with the Iranians, who had themselves very recently taken American hostages, and sold weapons to that same Iranian regime in order to get American hostages being held in Lebanon released. Let me say that again. They sold weapons to help arm a regime that had taken American hostages. The regime that they now say is the single biggest threat on the planet, the mullahs. They sold them weapons in order to free some American hostages. They then took some of the money from those sales and funded a secret war in Nicaragua, which they also were barred by Congress from doing. That is a whole other part of that story.
A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true. but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
And after all that, the narrative on the right wasn't that Oliver North was a bad guy, he'd negotiated with terrorists, or that Ronald Reagan needed to be held to account. No, it was that Oliver North was a hero for selling weapons to the mullahs. And now my joke tweet, that we needed the conservative hero to weigh in on the Bergdahl situation, has of course become a reality, with North bringing America what he calls the real story on Fox News.
Does this president realize that having announced the terms of this exchange, every American, not just those on the battlefield, every American traveling overseas becomes vulnerable to kidnapping and being held for ransom?
Elsewhere, North demanded to know whether there was a ransom paid that could finance a terrorist organization in order to get Bergdahl back, which is a topic he, admittedly, knows a lot about. Joining me now, Eric Boehlert, senior fellow at Media Matters. I got to say, those tweets today were really something. And what they put in my mind is that if, God forbid, this young man had died in Afghanistan,
right.
the absolute freakout over that, the just charges of treachery that would have been leveled to the president by the same people.
Right.
It's just obvious that that would have happened.
Yeah, and 2 points. We have members of Congress who are deleting tweets that they have sent out over the weekend offering, conventional sympathy
thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts
feel
and
good
prayers.
For his family.
Then they realized, they watched Fox News for a little while, they realized, oh, we're not doing thoughts and prayers. We're doing the other thing where we're going to smear not only this prisoner of war returning, we're going to smear his family too, from the small town of Haley, Idaho. So this is not normal, and that's why we're seeing these flips. But right. So what if the script had been flipped? What if word leaked in a couple of months that Obama had a real offer on the table to get the only prisoner of war,
ailing and in ill health, which is what the words have been said from the administration. I don't know if they're telling the truth, but I suppose they probably are about that detail. Yeah, exactly. There had been an offer on the table, and the administration had not done it, and he had died in the hands of the Taliban.
Right. Obviously, there would be articles of impeachment within a week, right? So this was a
and that's the tenor. That's what was so interesting about those tweets. The tenor of the activism around Bowe Bergdahl in the beginning was he's being left behind by the traitorous Barack Obama, right? That Barack Obama doesn't want to bring this guy home. And let me say this.
Now he's been saved by the traitorous Barack Obama.
Let me say this. People saying, well, now these new facts have come to light. Michael Hastings, may he rest in peace, wrote an incredible article about this whole story in 2012 in Rolling Stone that was published in the liberal media, Rolling Stone. I read it then, a bunch of people. In which it talks about him being disgruntled with the war, walking off base, seemingly unclear why, but possibly to desert, possibly to walk to Pakistan. All those facts were known then.
Yeah, and if you talk about, that town that had to cancel its celebration, the Chamber of Commerce president said for 5 years, no one ever said anything to us. We had no complaints. There was no hate mail about this.
Right, for 5 years this town has been holding vigil for this young man to come back.
But that information has been out. There's been questions whether he deserted. There's been questions whether he walked away. The other very interesting piece of information from the Hastings article was there were point people in the administration trying to get a release. They were told in 2012 by members of Congress, if you swap a release during an election year, we're going to launch a Willie Horton-style smear campaign. We are going to paint you as a Taliban appeaser. We are going to play politics with this. So they've had this blueprint in the drawer since 2012, and now they're using it.
In 2009, back when he was first taken, a guy by the name of Ralph Peters went on Fox News and basically said if he deserted, the Taliban can save us hassle. On air, said this about a POW. 23 members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, wrote to Roger Ailes. Took the extraordinary of writing Roger Ailes basically saying, you cannot have someone saying this. His implied suggestion the Taliban should simply kill Private First Class Bergdahl, who was then Private First Class, to save us a lot of legal hassle and legal bills was repulsive and deserves to be repudiated by your news organization. That guy who said that, here he is last night on Fox.
I'm sick of hearing people, even on Fox, instant experts who never served in their military, saying, well, we always went after our deserters and our troops and bring them home, even if they're deserters. Megan, throughout much of our history, we did go after deserters, and when we got them, we shot them or hanged them.
If I'm not mistaken, there has been one person executed for desertion since the Civil War. It was a man in the World War II, one. So this is not some normal thing. But also, I mean, one of the key things here is you see this where this fact pile gets built up. We still don't know what kind of medical condition he is in. In fact, there was a briefing to senators today. Mark Kirk left saying, I saw the video, the proof of life video. And I understand now why they felt they had to move quickly. There's an article in the Washington Post today about villagers who saw him walk off, said they thought he was high on hashish or out of his mind in some way because he seemed so disoriented. We do not know the facts, and yet there is just this remarkable rush to absolutely destroy this guy, destroy his reputation, destroy his family's reputation, destroy the reputation of anyone that would defend him in his hometown.
Yeah, and so the way Fox News wants to do it, the way that the echo chamber wants to do this is not to have a debate. So no one has talked to this person in 5 years. Nobody knows what happened, and that's the way they want to do it. They want to close the window on any factual discussion.
Eric Boehlert from Media Matters, thank you. A week ago, before Bowe Bergdahl was released, the biggest scandal in America involved evidence of systemic book cooking and mismanagement at the Department of Veterans Affairs, with many veterans facing excessive waits to see a doctor and the evidence being covered up. And then Eric Shinseki, the head of the VA, resigned, and suddenly the VA story disappeared, just disappeared, fell off the map. At the time, we asked, what happens the day after Eric Shinseki resigns? How does this get fixed? Today, Ryan Grimm has an amazing piece in Huffington Post explaining some of the roots of the ongoing problems at the VA. And joining me now is Ryan Grimm, Washington Bureau Chief of the Huffington Post. Ryan, there's a great piece of reporting. You talk about the Veteran Affairs Committee in Congress and why it has done a bad job of providing oversight to this very important part of the government. What's the main thesis here?
Right, it's quite simple. If you're a member of Congress, your #1 priority is to raise money. In order to raise money, you want to get on committees that oversee industries that are going to give you money. That's energy and commerce, that's financial services, which oversees banks, Ways and Means, which writes taxes, and that's basically it. Veterans Affairs oversees the VA. There is no money in that, so nobody wants to be on it. For instance, Hulskamp, who Boehner kicked off all of his committees for trying to overthrow him in a coup, is still on the Veterans Affairs Committee.
Wait a second. So it basically says, I'm going to punish you by taking you off the other committees, but I'll leave you on Veterans Affairs because being on Veterans Affairs is so low status and so hard to raise money off of that you can stay there even though you're being punished.
It might even be more of the punishment. In fact, Democrats, so there are only 11 Democrats on the entire committee. 8 of them are freshmen, which means that last Congress, everybody fled. And I was told by a source on the Hill that they were actually 1 person short this year, and so they had to cajole Tim Walz, a Democrat from Minnesota, into waiving onto the committee. You know, you're only allowed to be on so many committees. He agreed to do an extra one so that they could fill out the roster. That doesn't mean that everybody shows up for them, but at least they have now their full 11 people assigned. And Chris, the Financial Services Committee, for instance, has 61 members, whereas Veterans Affairs has 25.
They are put there. Let's just be clear about the Financial Services Committee. That is the place you can raise the most money. Everyone wants to be on that committee. It's huge, partly because you can go raise money from the financial services industry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the average person on that Financial Service Committee raises about twice as much as the average person on the Veterans Affairs Committee. Now, the people on VA, they still have to raise money because they have to run every 2 years. That just means they have to work all that much harder to try to keep pace with everybody else, which means they have even less time. And they're also not invested. As soon as they get some seniority, they're out of there. So it's not like they're going to sit down and really learn how does the VA work. I talked to Jim Cooper, one Democrat, who said, you know, most of the people on that committee don't know the names of the people below the secretary.
You've got a situation in which the scandal has moved on once Eric Shinseki resigned. The problems still remain, and I haven't seen a whole lot of blueprint. I know John McCain has been talking about introducing some kind of privatization legislation, may have already introduced it. Bernie Sanders had a meeting today that they called productive with him, and John Boehner has sent a letter. John Boehner's letter, am I right that it didn't include the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee?
That's right, and from the reporting that I was able to do, that wasn't an intentional snub. It's just, you know, you don't actually need to go to the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee because that committee doesn't really have any pull within the institution. So, you know, and there was also a very telling line in there that said, look, they asked the White House, please tell the VA system to start responding you know, appropriately to the Veterans Affairs Committee when there are requests for documents and other requests for transparency. In other words, you know, really sticking up for their little sisters in the Veterans Affairs Committee, even while they're not even themselves signing the letter. It's a really pitiful state of affairs.
Ryan Grimm from the Huffington Post. Great reporting. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, coming up, yesterday in what we've called the craziest race in America, the Republican primary in Mississippi, the night apparently ended with a Tea Party official with close ties to the Tea Party candidate locked in a courthouse alone with the ballots at 2 in the morning? We will explain.